Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Magpie Circle. Welcome to one and all. I suspect it will be a fairly lively programme tonight, lots to discuss. We want to hear from you. If you were at Salford on Saturday, bit of a horror show. How concerned, excuse me, how concerned are you by recent results? How optimistic are you that with injuries coming back, that we will be fine. And with a strong transfer window in January, everything in the garden will look much rosier come the end of January. Now then, in the history of this show, we've only issued one red card, and I don't want to be issuing any more tonight. There is quite clearly a very wide cross section of polarized views, and people, it's football. We all get quite emotional about it. I've been speaking to quite a few of my inner circle, if you want, to gauge views and reaction from Saturday. Everybody's opinion is welcome. Everybody is entitled to an opinion, but please make it respectfully, irrespective of which side of the fence you are currently sitting on. I think there is certainly a groundswell of Notts fans that would like to see a change in manager. There are others that believe he needs to be given time and players to return from injury. However, I think we're probably all of an opinion that too many more performances and results like Saturday means that the patience will be wearing very, very, very thin indeed. Now, I'm going to kick off. Stowe will be giving his thoughts very shortly, but over to our flock. And here's a cross section of early comments from people and their thoughts. And these are read out in order as people have made these comments on the message board. So please don't shoot me or anyone else. I'll give my thoughts for what they're worth as a layman. Stallard, the pro, will give his thoughts. Here's a cross section. Ian Cooksey: stop blaming injuries and take a look at the players that are playing and the tactics that are being employed. When will the club learn that playing out from the back doesn't work? The proof is there. Chris Gosling. Now, Chris is normally very much not a half glass full. He's a full glass full merchant of our flock. I was at Salford, dragged myself off my sick bed to go. Don't think I've been that disgusted in a Notts performance in a long time. Still not really over it. Adam Kent. I was at Salford and we looked dire. Frankly, embarrassing. Just kept repeating the same old actions. Can't blame injuries or the pitch. The tactics were off and we played badly. Ian Cooksey adds, the defence is starting to look just like last season's, to be honest. Slocum or Stone would be destroyed if they made the same mistakes that Alex Bass has made in the last 3 games. Some other thoughts. James Moore: if we don't get a win in the next couple of games, will the bells be ringing out for Stuart Maynard come Christmas Day? Adam Ken adds, if we're going to keep playing with wing backs, shouldn't we focus on getting some in January? James Moore adds, knowing our owners, they will stick by Stuart till the end of the season, regardless of results between now and then. Stephen Newton: I wasn't there Saturday, but it sounds like Stell's header was their highlight of the afternoon. There must be an in-joke that I missed. I'm sure Stell will educate me on that one. I was there Saturday, says Jeff Briggs. Worst performance of the season, just like last season, this time last year at Harrogate. Forgot about Harrogate. That was a horror show as well, wasn't it, Jeff, if I remember rightly? I really felt sorry for the players who took the booze at the end of the match, says Adam Kent. Ian Cooksey: starting from Saturday, we have 5 games in a fortnight. The results in those games should dictate what happens next. If we are going to have a new boss, then give him the transfer window. Gazza Lee gives a slightly different take. 2 points off the playoffs and 6 points off automatic promotion with games in hand and some games in hand at home. We either give up or crack on with the hope of a strong January. I'm in the crack on group. James Moore: if you listen back to Stell's opening words on Saturday, it's a small, tight pitch. If they do press us high, we need to play our football further up the pitch and just get rid in and around our box. Spot on. I'm sure we'll be debating that very shortly. Chris B, I've been on the fence with Stuart since his appointment. Hoped he'd come good, but I'm sorry. He's just out of his depth. Maybe he's a decent coach, but he's not a leader. There are many more which we will be reading out. But as I've had the lurgy, like many other people, throat and all the rest of it, I'm going to not talk quite as much as usual. You'll all be delighted to know. Stel, look, very strong views. We all get emotional about football. On a 0 to 10, how bad was Saturday?
As a one-off performance, well, which end of the scale is bad? Because I'm going that end of the scale.
Yeah,
It
well,
was poor.
bad is
You know,
lower end, as in 0.
yeah,
10
it
is good.
was.
I don't think we'll be troubling the 10.
No, it certainly wasn't a 10 out of 10 performance. It was poor. It was. I don't know what number you want to put on it. 1, 2, 3, something down that
Right.
end of the scale. Um, just worst performance of the season by a fair stretch. And that it's that allied to the poor results in recent weeks that get people's backs up, get their emotions high, get the it feels like we're on a downward trajectory at the minute, and we are. And then you see, prior to Saturday, results haven't been good at all, but you could at least make an argument that that the performances have been all right. The Walsall performance, yes, we got beat, yes, we conceded 3 goals, but we more than matched a team that's sat near the top of the table, or sat at the top of the table. Peterborough, we gave a good account of ourselves there, although like I say, I think that the scoreline flattered us in the end. So it's a little bit of a snowball, a cumulative effect, and then all of a sudden you drop off a cliff with a performance like that on Saturday, which Stuart's come out and apologised for. That's how bad the performance was. Apologised to the fans that travelled, paid their money to go and watch that. Way below anything that they've produced this season. So yeah, on the scale of performance, it was really poor. We were out. Well, we were out everything. Whatever I said on the radio, whatever category you want to compare 2 teams with in a football match, whether it's work rate, quality, passing, finishing, defending, anything, they won everything. We were outdone in every single department, I would say. And like I say, it's not often you can say that. It's a long time since we can say that about Notts. These performances do happen. Again, lower league football, they're not, let's get away from the top end of the Premier League players and all the superstars that perform week in, week out, it seems. Although, see Manchester City for, how things can change. But yeah, it was a real one of them days where everybody had an off day. Sometimes as a player, you have a bad day, everything happens, it doesn't work, it goes wrong, you're second best, you lose your battle to your opponent, but you're looking for your teammates to sort of not carry you, but dig you out a little bit and help you out. It didn't happen. Nobody, from a Notts perspective, really won their individual battle, and so that's why Salford were good value for the 3-0 win.
I want to pick up on that in terms of being out muscled, out fought in a moment, but I think we want to give as many people as possible the opportunity to air their views. I'll carry on because there's a lot of them. From our followers. Paul Smith, Maynard will be given time, but I fear it will be time lost. He's had almost a year. We have lost more in that time than we have won. But worst of all, we are getting worse the more it goes on. Richard Wood spent all that money on a new pitch and results are worse than last year. Lee Swanwick completely dismantled everything Williams built in record time. Surely the owners must see that. Senga Schmidt, Stuart is out of his depth. Ian G, in response to Ghazali's comment, the cracks in our setup grow wider by the week. We are on track for low mid-table again at least. Evening all, Richard Hawksworth, let the social media numpty meltdown commence. 80 Clark. Evening everyone. All I want for Christmas is 3 points. I hope you're not disappointed, Adi, along with the rest of us. Harry Pye gives an alternative view. One poor performance and fans have lost their minds. Rich Hawksworth, forward with pace, a forward with pace who is good enough to start, urgently required. We'll move on to January transfer window. Clearly, it can't come soon enough for us, I would respectfully suggest. Ian Cooksey goes on. The owners have played their part, sold our top striker on the 6th of July, giving them 2 months to sign a replacement. The replacement was Giovanni Brown at 11:45 on the 30th of August. Ian is clearly not a happy Christmas or Easter bunny. Martin Shipley, fortunately, most teams are inconsistent like ourselves. So we're not really falling far behind at the moment, but we need another striker as we so lack firepower and the recent recruits aren't good enough. Just get behind your team, says Fine Leg. Paul Smith, faith in January window is low. For the Jones and Bostocks we have had, your Cundy, Hinchke and Colcats, remember him. John Collins, when gates start to fall and boos ring out at the lane, then the brothers may have to take action. Chris B, the owners replaced Macca in January. Jatta was his replacement. Lippy Jane, Bradford City hadn't won since October until Saturday. We can do this. Callum, did Saturday's performance show a clear lack of leadership on the pitch? We needed that gritty player to get the players to show up. Colin Metcalf, the team we had out on Saturday was not bad. The players are good players. I cannot fathom why we were so bad. I give Maynard the January window and until March to improve things. Bob H says Richard Montague, director and kind of a de facto director of football, seems to escape all criticism. His radar isn't working, says Bob H. I'm very concerned, says Paul. I've looked at goals conceded to scored ratio and almost the same as last season. Callum Frankton Lees adds, Jatta's first touch Saturday was awful. I noticed it a few games ago. Gives the ball away so much when it's played onto him. Luke Beardsley, Stockport and Mansfield played good attacking football without needing to make 50 passes before the halfway line. We make very few clear-cut chances. Evening all, says Duncan Connery. Believe in the owner's judgment. We're in a far better position than when they came in. It took Luton a few years to get through League Two, and look where they ended up. Too much negativity, says Neil Widdowson. Ian Hayward, regardless of what we all say, we need to hear what the brothers have to say. Lippy Jane, the guy in front of me was so rude to Bass at half time. No booze, please. Luke Beardsley, I'm all for supporting our team, but the past few performances really haven't been good enough. Bench offered nothing again, says Andy Easom. And so it goes on. One thing I want to pick up, Stout, the infamous substitutions at Peterborough. And, you know, you and I would possibly disagree about how much it materially affected the outcome of the game. But clearly making the 4 subs in one go was, I think, at best debatable. And the comments that were made by Stuart afterwards, where he said he had to make them, you know, the allusion there is obviously to if he carried on, the players would have got injured physically. We were asking too much of them, which clearly suggests to me sports science people advising him about red flags, potential fatigue, muscle tears, all the rest of it. Couldn't do the Tuesday and play the 90 on the Saturday. Okay. So if you like, a very direct correlation between exert on players and their ability to recover quickly in time. So as a result of a couple of tiles on the scoreboard last Saturday, we didn't have a game. So we didn't play for 10-11 days. I think the manager in his interview with Dave Brace-Girdle said the prep was excellent, for the game. If you are rigidly applying these rules of sports science and data, we've had 11 clear days. Salford had a game on the Saturday, so they've played more. If it's applied directly, then how do you account for us being leggy, lethargic, out-muscled, when if we've had 10, 11 days break, we should have been really at it.
That question, Paul, I think is the $64 million question in football, in sport, no matter what. You can prepare perfectly for a game, any game, and you prepare as best you can for every game. But there is no rhyme or reason sometimes when you go over the white line that it just doesn't happen. And Saturday, I think for Notts was just an example of that. Nothing to do with we weren't prepared. Like I said, there's no excuse. We had plenty of time off, plenty of time to rest or do work or whatever was needed for everybody. But sometimes you just have a game where everything is not right, and that was Saturday. Now, without wanting to gloss over Saturday, and I'm certainly not, because as I've said, worst performance of the season by a stretch for me. The most important thing now is the response, i.e., this Saturday's game against Bradford, and that's not to gloss over it. And I'm not going to go, oh, just a bad day at the office, let's not worry about it. But now it is a response because, like I say, results have been poor. 2 points now out of the last 5 league games is nowhere near good enough for any team, let alone Notts with the ambitions that Notts have got. So you need a
And you would not
response.
excuse 2 points. Sorry, Star. You would not excuse 2 points from 5 and say, well, we've had a load of injuries, so therefore we can't expect to get too much more than that.
No, I would say we have had injuries and we've had injuries to key players, but still 2 points from 5 games is not where Notts have assembled a squad to be. Okay, granted, you can have poor runs throughout a season. We could go back to the start, the early part of this season, 4 wins on the spin. Stuart, and everyone else will point at, nobody was knighting him for 4 wins on the spin, so now we're looking to sack him for 2 points out of 5. No, that's the up and down nature of a season. But the reality is, this is where we are now. And 2 points out of 5, given any amount of injuries, is not enough for what Notts want to achieve. It's not enough for the budget that they've got. It's not enough for the squad that they've assembled. So to say, oh, we'll gloss over Saturday, which I'm not glossing over it, but I can go, okay, that's a one-off, but it has to be a one-off by virtue of the performance on Saturday at home on a perfect pitch, familiar surroundings, with, I hope, everybody, all the Notts fans behind the team, creating a good atmosphere, realising we're in a tough spot. We're in a real tough spot and we need 3 points. I make no bones. I think we do not need 3 points, but I think, we virtually do need 3 points to arrest this slump, to get everybody back on side before it starts, becoming a little bit not toxic. Toxic's the common word in it these days, but I do think we're coming into it because of the results, because of the lack of points we've picked up, because of what's happened in the recent games. It obviously puts extra pressure on these few games now coming up to Christmas, and there's never any more pressure than on your next game. That's the most important one. That's the one they'll be prepping for. I'm going to say, yes, injuries. I've mentioned them plenty because we've had key players injured. But that doesn't mean to say I think, oh, we've got key players injured, it doesn't matter if we lose games. Nothing else can be expected. No, everything else can be expected and needs to be performed. And then you go into areas of, right, people have questioned tactics and team selection and what have you, substitutions, as we did a couple of weeks ago. But also, you've got to start looking at the players. The players that are coming in, here's your chance to grab a shirt while them key players are out. How many have done it? How many have stopped Dan Crowley or Jody Jones or Conor Grant when he's fit, Curtis Edwards, Scott Robertson? How many players, when they're fit, whenever that might be, can say, well, he's not getting back in the team because I've took his shirt and I am a shoo-in? Not many, if any. And that to me is all part of the mix. The blame, if we're all looking to blame people nowadays, that's the way it is. But the reason of it is not just, oh, it's Stuart Maynard. It's a collective. It's a whole thing. Players aren't playing well enough. Okay, people might say about the tactics or what have you, but the players have to implement them tactics. The players are a squad that train day in, day out to go and implement it. They go and win games, 4 on the spin earlier on in the season. They go and put in really good performances, even in defeat sometimes. At Walsall, the performance was good, and we had injuries then. It's not at Doncaster, the performance was good, and we got a draw at a decent Doncaster team. We had injuries then. You know, you can have injuries. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the pitch wasn't perfect on Saturday. It was tight, but you could see that. But you've still got to get results. Me and you do agree on this, Paul, and I'm sure everybody does. It is results over everything else. Results first, performance second. But again, the performance can lead to give you the better chance of getting a result, but it is always results first. And at the minute, results mean that pressure is increasing on them to get a result in the next game.
Right. It's a question for you, Star, and it sounds stupid, and I'll try and phrase this in a way that doesn't
I
make
should be
me.
good for it then.
No, it make me look stupid. Do we, as a club, I'm not just talking Stuart Maynard here, as a club, we are clearly heavily data driven and statistically reliant. That's kind of an embedded culture that comes from the top all the way down. And we hear an awful lot about possession and dominating the ball and all of that. And every week, and I've gone on record at the start of the season saying we will finish top of the possession league table in League Two this season. I guarantee it. But that doesn't actually count for anything, you know? And we, for me, we kind of, it's almost like if we don't get a result, but we perform well and we had 72% possession, and if we keep having 72% possession, that will lead to us winning games, that will lead to us scoring goals. And, you know, there's algorithms and logarithms that say it will come good. If ever possession stats, which, you know, I'm not a fan of, are meaningless drivel, we had 55% possession Saturday. Now, do you think Carl Robinson is bothered and says to his Salford lads, we won, but I was disappointed we only had 45% possession? Of course he's bloody not. Win the game, win the game. And I just think sometimes it's almost like we want plaudits for the style of play. We score a wonder goal against Doncaster and we want people to talk about it for 2 months and win goal of the month. We play Walsall, they're rubbish, blah, blah, blah. They've quietly gone about and won 3 or 4 on the trot. How many points are Walsall clear of us? We were about level, couple of points behind them. Are they 10, 12 in front of us now? Nah, that to me is what it's about. And I just think sometimes it's probably just me, we don't prioritise results enough. I know that sounds stupid, but when we had the conversation a week or two, you said to me, didn't you? You know managers, lots of them, managers that will be happier with a 1-0 than they will with a 4-2, 5-4, all the rest of it, because it's kind of don't concede a goal, score at the other end, 3 points in the bag, away we go. Is there anything in that, or is that just me? And I wonder if that commutes itself to players in terms of keeping possession. Graham Souness wrote a brilliant article in a newspaper on Saturday, and he spoke about how when he looks at this, he can't believe now that the players that have the best retention rate in the Premier League, the position in which they play is centre half. And he said, when we played, defenders get rid on it. He said, we as midfielders try and create forward balls, give it to what he called the badge kissers, who score the goals. But he said, now when you look underneath these stats, centre halves keep the ball more than anybody else on the pitch, right? But they're by and large all passes in your third of the pitch, all horizontal, 10 yards. Rant over. Thoughts?
Yeah, no. Look, we could do a full podcast series on the changes and differences between football when Graham Souness played, when I played, to now. Fact of the matter is the game has changed. Fact of the matter. But I agree I agree with what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying, and a lot of people have got the same point. It's almost as if, we'll sacrifice possession to get points. Well, I think the thing is, Stuart Maynard would, the owners would. It's still about winning. The possession-based football is designed to give you a repeatable way of playing that is attractive to people, so people buy tickets and want to come and watch when it's done well. But it's a repeatable way of playing that has success. You create overloads at the back, you dominate the ball, and by having the ball, you should, in theory, stop the other team from scoring and have more chances yourself. Where that goes wrong, or I say it goes wrong, is when, like Saturday, we have 55% possession and lose the game 3-0. And immediately that's fuel on the fire for anybody that goes, well, possession don't work, does it? Because look at what's happened Saturday. The fact of the matter is, if Salford have had, if we'd have had less possession on Saturday, that wouldn't guarantee us winning. I think we'd have only lost by more. So the 55% possession we had prevented us losing probably 4 or 5. Sometimes we have possession and the end product isn't there. That's the thing I would probably say has been the biggest thing I've noticed over the last 10 games or so, is that I just don't think our quality, I mean, the stats back it up. It's easy to say, but I think just with your own eyes, we haven't had the same cutting edge over the last 10 or so games. In the final third, we get into positions and the crossing's not been great, or we've not had anybody on the end of them. We've not, we've not looked like opening teams up and scoring at a fair few. We got 3 at Peterborough. And other than that, I think we've got 8 goals in the last 10 games in the league. So I don't think we've carried anything like the same end product. But the problem is that the two things in terms of possession and results, they're separate. They're not really connected, in that you're saying there, if we have 72% possession, but we don't win. Conversely, the other side of the coin is we have 28% possession, and you'd go, at the minute, I'd fancy us to concede a shed load with that and not score any. So we need to have that possession, but we've just got to be better with it. We've got to be better with its quality. If you want to go, rather than taking the sort of polar opposition, or it's possession or it's points, no, it's quality of possession. It's what you do with the possession. That's what determines football matches. That's what determines the points. And I think for me, certainly in the last, I don't know, 10 games, I'm saying it a round number, but, as a broad selection, I don't think the quality that we've had with the ball and the threat and the clinical end product, if you like, has been anything like. And again, the stats back that up, so I'm not saying anything otherworldly there, but I think that has been noticeable. Again, you can come back saying, well, for a large part of that, 2 of our key creative players have been out. But again, and as much as we've spoken about that, and that's had plenty of minutes, so it then says to those that have come in and replaced them key players, are they up to it? Are they performing well enough? Not to say they aren't going to go on and have a good career, or they aren't actually good enough or anything like that, but in terms of form and what they're producing on the pitch at the minute, and that's not also exonerating those that have played all the way throughout, I think performance levels have dropped significantly. I don't have access to all the stats, the passes completed stats, the yardage covered, all the metrics that the brothers will have, that Stuart will have, Richard Montague will have. I couldn't tell you whether them stats are up or down, but I suspect that you'd have to say that they're probably down in a lot of areas, and certainly in key areas, which is both penalty areas.
To drill down into that Salford, and clearly one of the more memorable moments, for all the wrong reasons, was the goal. I think it was the first goal. I lost track of him. With Bass playing the ball out and not going long, Crowley dispossessed, and the guy passes it into the net. And Stuart spoke about prep. He spoke about decision making. He spoke about the poor pitch. Okay. Now, do you think sometimes players get caught in 2 frames of mind? So Alex Bass at Wimbledon, last season, hits that ball 70 yards clear. Because I would imagine goalkeepers, defenders are clearly hit the longer ball as more of a last resort. We want to try and play it out. If it's absolutely nothing on, go long, but do what you can. Does Alex Bass, in that case, get caught in 2 minds? And the example, I use it again because I think it kind of crystallizes clarity and simplicity of instruction to a football player. Alan Paris, under the Neil Warnock era, he often played left back as well as right back, and he's at full back, and the ball is cleared over the line towards him, so he's facing and he's going that way. It comes towards him. He's told by Neil Warnock, don't take a touch, put it straight back into the other half. Now, irrespective of whether you accuse that of long ball or whatever, there's kind of a clarity of instruction. And Neil would take it a step further with Alan and with other defenders. And Alan would tell me the story. He takes a touch. Yeah. As it's coming down, slightly miscontrols it. It goes out for a throw in. Yeah. To the opposition. They're in Notts' half of the pitch. Neil Warnock fined him. If you ever take a touch, again, I am fining you. So Alan Parris, player that plays for Notts in the top division of football, is told the ball comes over, bang, you put it straight back. Edit, kick it, do not take a touch or I'll fine you. And there's a massive clarity, yeah, irrespective of whether you think it's the right thing to do or not. The player knows what the manager wants. Do you think sometimes, and clearly we all knew it was a bad pitch, the guy, giving you the big one about you called absolutely at the start of the game, at the start of your commentary, that kind of thing. Do you think sometimes our players are getting caught in two minds or not?
Possibly. You'd have to ask them for that. But how many times do you hear me talk about decision making? Football is all about decision making, and that's where I know everyone piles on a manager and a coach, and ultimately, of course, they're the ones that pay the price. They're the one that set the tactic. But I don't think now Stuart's been in charge of Notts for nigh on a year. You
Yeah.
know, and before that, Luke Williams, like I say, it's not a complete sea change from how we played under Luke Williams either before that. I don't think the players at this stage of the season, if they don't know what Stuart Maynard wants him to do, then they're in the wrong game. Like, the message is clear. I'm not being funny. I could go on the pitch and know I couldn't do it, but I could go on the pitch and know what he wants to be done. But what he wants to be done, when he wants Alex Bass to roll the ball to Dan Crowley for the first goal, he wants him to assess that position, assess that situation, and only play it if he's 100% sure that he's making Dan Crowley favourite. And that goes along the chain of when players move into positions. So the fact is, Alex Bass has made an incorrect decision, an incorrect judgment in them seconds, right? So again, you go, whose fault is that? Is that, do we then get down wicket? Now, I think on Saturday we went long more than we ever have done, because we did. And I'll tell you what, part of the problem was that it didn't improve us, because we didn't win many first balls. We certainly didn't hold the ball up very often. We certainly didn't win many second balls. And even by going long, we didn't look any better. Saturday was one of them games where just everybody was off it. Everybody was off it, and including decision making. The problem is, the more wrong decisions you make closer to your own goal, the more penal it is. And that's it. So then you get to an argument of not an argument, but you get into a discussion of, like you say, and I'm always loath to start comparing football to what happened 30 years ago, 40 years,
Yeah.
but the principle's still the same, clarity of message. But I don't think there's a fogginess in the message of what the players are wanting to do. I think you've what the manager's wanting the players to do. I think it's more down to the implementation of the decision making, when to do it, when not to do it. Alex Bass kicked plenty of balls long on Saturday, and he has done throughout the season. But that's not to say he overdoes it or he underdoes it, whatever. He does it at times. You have to vary it up. There are times when, if you make the wrong pass, it costs you. And that's one thing I would be wary of. And that's one thing I would change about modern football. And you see it. Say it would change about. I don't want us get this right. I don't want us to start being a launch it team. That's not the solution for me. But it was similar to Swindon away last season, when I was apoplectic on the radio of seeing how bad the pitch is. And the pitch at Swindon was worse than Saturday's, by the way. Saturday's pitch was a normal pitch, we'd have classed it as in our day, if we want to go back years. But it wasn't perfect. It wasn't the bowling green that they used to. And it also wasn't a big pitch. It was narrow, and it wasn't a big pitch. So therefore, you don't have a lot of time on the ball. So then for me, you modify what you do. You know, right, lads, we're still going to play out. We're still going to look to play to bring them onto us. But if they want to press high and they want to go man for man, don't be afraid to go over the top and play into Jatta and play into Didsey, or play it out wide to Sam Austin or whatever. But do it with quality. That's the key that always gets missed out in any of these let's pass it, let's go long debates, is the quality with which it's done. There have been long ball teams that have been absolute bobbins to watch because it's dreadful dross. But that's because the players aren't good enough with the accuracy of a 40-yard, 50-yard pass as opposed to a 10-yard pass. Whatever is done needs to be done with quality, but given the circumstance, given the pitch, given the opposition, I might have been more inclined to go like, right, lads, we're going to look to try and play from the back and build as we do. But if it gets tight, and if they're pressing high and taking a risk, let's look into the big man, or let's look into Didsey, or let's look at down the sides, or whatever. Let's look and turn them round. And if we do that early on, then they won't be so inclined to press high after that, And that is something that goes back to time immemorial, really, in football. Try and do what the opposition don't want you to do, but you've got to do it with quality. It's not just a case of we've conceded a goal again from trying to play out from the back, right? Scrap playing out from the back. It's not that. You've got to do it better, but you've got to make better decisions on when to do it and when not to do it.
Very good. Jamie Straw took my Manchester City supporting mate who lives in Salford Saturday. He saw 2 stinking results in 2 days. Ian Cooksey, I watched their manager on Saturday. 2-0 up and he wanted more. Stewart stood with his hands in his pockets. No encouragement, rollickings handed out. Martin Kelp, who spent about 6 weeks trying to unravel the intricacies of being able to post on the message board. So well done to Martin. He's finally got in. Here's his first post. I've not read it yet. I hope it's worth it. Hi, the league this season is the poorest for a while. We need to replace ML and Naman urgently. Stuart Maynard, after 46 games, has proved he isn't good enough. No tactical flexibility, plus get a director of football as well. Kay says Saturday wasn't an off day. We were tactically inept, so that is down to Stuart. Salford wanted it more. Richard Elvian, I think giving everyone the weekend off when the Colchester match was called off was a mistake. Yes, any players with niggles, issues, etc., stay at home, but for the others, make use of the time on the field. I wasn't aware if that was the case, that's what happened. It's not looking good for the sale of half-season tickets, says Russell Smith. I don't know how many we've sold, but one suspects it might not be too many. Charlie Capewell, in answer to our goal-scoring issues, recall Junior Morias in January. He's got 1 or 2 for Dagenham, albeit in the National League. Ian G, I doubt we will do much business in January and will rely on the return of the long-term injured as our fresh legs. Mariah scoring a few at Dagenham, so may be good for a recall. Evening all, sorry I'm late, says Chris J. I was looking for a Notts win and ran out of time. Derek Flowers, people say we need a striker. We could have Erling Haaland up front, but without service, they're not going to score. Ian Cooksey's picked up on, and Stella and I were discussing this very briefly before the programme started. It does appear to be sacking season at the minute across all 4 divisions and into the National League. Ian Cooksey, Birchnell and Doyle both sacked this weekend. Notts, please don't even think about it. Neil Wooderson, Mr. Maynard will turn it round. Just wait and see. Chris Gosling, Robbo disappeared again. Pretty sure he's made of polystyrene. Starting the season with so many unfit players is costing us now. Chris B. Ian Everett seems to be on the brink at Bolton. If he becomes available, we should make a move. I'd rather have Des Buckingham, says Chris Gosling, than Ian Everett. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, says John Collins, but that does not make it right. Totally agree. 2 points from 15 is not Okay. Michael Fletcher, we have had so many injuries to key players. It's no wonder results and performances have suffered. Martin Kelk, why, again, he's obviously into the swing of things on his message board now. He's tapping away. Why do we have wing backs who always play on the wrong side? A wry smile from Stell. That's normally I bring that up at some point during every show. Too many players not good enough. I could name 6. Too many players who are injury prone. Where's our Ian Bishop? Where's the leaders? Martin, making up for lost time now, he's discovered how to use the message board. Ian G. Des Buckingham would be a great shout. Proven promotion experience and plays a style the brothers would want. Fraser Dodds, bottom 2 in the last 6 form table. Not once since October the 26th in the league. For a stats-based ownership, that is awful. We are in relegation form. Chris Gosling, Saturday was the game we needed a response from the players. They came up far too short. Ian Cooksey, Stell is repeating what I said earlier. Stop griping about injuries and look at the players that are playing now. What else have we got? John Collins, I suppose 2 points from 15 is better than naught. Delusional. I think he's having a dig at someone else there. Given Buckingham is available, says Chris Gosling, I'd certainly at least have a conversation. We still have a manager. It is interesting. Chris could not be one of the more fervent Stuart Maynard will get it right camp, but does appear to have moved a little bit, judging by his comments this evening. Fraser Dodds still getting injuries. Robbie and Scott missing again at the weekend. Nothing to bring off the bench. Ian Cooksey, we are top now with 65% possession. Means nothing. The main stat that counts is the one next to Walsall's name is 40 points. Chris J, at a time like this, with fans on edge and points hard to come by, despite such a talented group of players, there's only one man to call. Bring back the mighty coat. It's time for Mr. Moniz. Oh, dear me. AKA, in brackets, agent to Ricardo Moniz, that one. Martin Kelk, on Saturday, it was really only Jody Jones who was out, who would have definitely started. Grant is a maybe. Edwards has hardly ever been a starter. I think that's an interesting point from Martin Stow. I understand the points about injuries. If I'm looking at that team Saturday, and this I think is this is a concern. Clearly, we are all looking to buy time. The club are looking to buy time for Stuart, get a result, ease that pressure, because it's a bit like a pressure cooker, isn't it, at the minute? And it's undoubtedly building. And kind of at the minute, it seems to be we get the injured players back, we get to January and bring new players in, we've got a game in hand or 2 at home, everything will be fine. If I'm honest, I don't see that. Or certainly it is not, it's far from definitive. The underlying trends at this moment worry me. You know, Crowley, massive miss. He plays Saturday, and clearly he's not going to be 100% yet. Yet his reappearance in a shirt on the pitch in the starting 11 gave us no benefit whatsoever. And I'm not quite sure where Jody Jones is or isn't at the moment, but it will take Jody Jones a week or 2 to get back up to top speed. And if you remember last year, Matty Palmer got injured in about September or October, and people were quoting points returns with Matty Palmer as automatic promotion standard. And then subsequently points without Matty Palmer as like bottom 6. So I don't think it's kind of the be all. And I'm not saying we're clutching at straws. And I'm not advocating managerial changes, and we'll talk in a minute about how many owners currently are ringing the changes across all of the top 5 divisions in the past week, all top 5 divisions. I am concerned about the underlying trend, if I'm honest. And I understand the club is trying to buy time for Stuart. You know, thank the fans are brilliant, blah. Don't worry, we'll get this back. I am a little bit concerned for him, if I'm honest with you at the minute. And I don't want to engage because there is no vacancy. And it's a personal view, I don't think there's a cat in hell's chance of our ownership making a change in head coach. Cat in hell's chance. For me, for there to be any change, the club would probably have to set a new record of consecutive league defeats. I really don't see it, but I am genuinely concerned that the tapering continues that way rather than going back up. What are your sort of inner thoughts on that scenario?
Yeah, well, I think everybody, no matter what, and again, I'm sure, and again, I don't do social media. I see bits and what have you, but I don't do it. Um, whatever side and whatever people have put since Saturday, obviously it's the emotion of a terrible performance, terrible result, and that's the. So I hope it's the end of a downturn in results. So 2 points from 5 games is calamitous, really, in terms of a return. Again, we've talked about the possible, not justification for it, but that, okay, there's injuries, but it's still not a good enough return. Nowhere near a good enough return. So it piles extra pressure on. So I absolutely understand why everybody with a Notts persuasion who wants to see Notts doing well is, to use your word, concerned. Now how they show that concern is it a manager out? Is it manager in? Is it X, Y, and Z? Whatever it is, but it's all about concern for these underlying, whatever you want to call it, but the downturn in performance and results. That's just human nature. And it's absolutely right. 2 points from the last 5 games is there's no future in that. So just the very nature of that, and again, you can take out the injuries from this equation, is, and I'm not one for sacking managers. If you want to go down that line, I'm not one for sacking managers at the first opportunity, or people say it's not the first opportunity. He didn't do so well last season. I'm not for that at all. But what I am for is you don't also go the other end of the spectrum. I don't agree with you there, saying we've got to set another record of defeats consecutively before anything happens. So, whoa, we don't want to go down that route. We're in a different place now as a club. We've got different ambitions, different owners. So I don't think it would take that. I think, cards on the table. I wouldn't look to change the manager now, because I think he's shown that when he's got players and he's got the players playing well as he did earlier this season, we're a hell of a team. Remember the Grimsby performance and the performances around that and the results. But at the minute, we're not that team. And now the big challenge is, can he turn it round? If you want to look at the manager, if you're going to lump it on the head coach manager, he's got to turn it round, and he's got to do it quickly. We're coming into Christmas, busy period. The next 3 games against teams that are around us, starting with a home game Saturday, where we battered Bradford at home first half last season. That we 4-0 up at half time. Obviously, second half was different, but we need to go and do something like that again. Otherwise, this is just going to keep on, and it's going to grow and grow, and the groundswell of opinion is going to grow that way, because opinions are always altering with what you see. 2 fantastic performances, and I'm not saying people will then be from Maynard out to Maynard in, but they'll be quieter. You know how football works. And vice versa. 2 poor performances on the back of Salford, there'll be some Maynard in that will slip into the Maynard out category, or pipe down completely quietly and not say anything and go, well, what will be will be. So he's under pressure. Football managers are always under pressure to get results, particularly at Notts now, with the ambition that the club's got. The stated ambition is to go up the divisions. It's not about solidifying ourselves in League Two, for want of a better word. The ambitions are to be in and around the playoffs and promotion, right? Which at this moment in time, forget what's gone. If you just looked at the league table, you go, "Oh, we're a game in hand of a lot of teams above us, and we're a few points outside the playoffs, so we're not a million miles away." The roller coaster that's got us here means we're on a downward spiral at the minute. That's got to change quickly for me. That's got to change quickly. Because if you carry on, we talk about momentum in sport all the time. It's such a big thing, confidence. And again, there's no better example than Man City at this minute to look at and going, nobody, but nobody in football or out of football could see this set of results coming from Man City's way. And now you either go, hold on, does that mean Guardiola's no good as a manager? Does that mean the players have got whatever the reason for it? Nobody could see it coming. And by the same token, of course, we're on a downward spiral. I'm hoping that the doom and gloom people, or the worried people, or the concern that people have got is ended Saturday with a positive result against Bradford, and then we go up. And people might go, well, I didn't really see that coming, but we've done it. But I think we need to do it. We can't carry on a downward slide. I like I say, I don't advocate sacking managers willy-nilly. I don't. But you can't go on without seeing positivity, without seeing performances or whatever. Again, and I go back to, this is not me saying, oh, yeah, I'm leaning towards getting rid. I'm not, because I think performances have been all right up until the weekend. The results haven't been, but the performances have been all right. But all right don't really cut the mustard if it carries on for any length of time. So I think we go into, it is a massive Christmas period. The Christmas period always is. You've got a lot of games in a short space of time. But because we've got three teams that are sort of in and around where we are in the table, games that you go, look, we need to pick up points. We haven't picked up points in the last 5, aside from the 2. We need a better return, because if that becomes, 3 or 4 points after 8 games, after we've played these next 3 games, then hold on a minute. There is a discussion there. And Stuart will know this. Anybody in football knows this. They're not daft. They're not heads in the sand. So it's very important that we get back on it and the players get back on it. And again, Stuart, the head coach, whoever it is, always carries the can. But it's not the only blame. Like I say, players' performance levels from where we were at Grimsby and then 4 wins on the spin to now, yes, there's injuries, there's key players out, but the performance levels are nowhere near. But again, some people say, well, that's down to the coach. Maybe it is, but it's also down to the players as well, and they've got to respond from Saturday. So big Christmas period, but a win against Bradford and things look different, as a win always does change things in football.
Yeah, I think as well. I remember having many conversations, and Derby as well as not. Mick Jones, who for many years was Neil Warnock's kind of like, more seasoned sage, and people forget that when Neil first came to the club, Warnock didn't start particularly well. And it was Derek Pavis that kind of engineered a conversation between Mick Jones and Neil. And clearly Neil was a bit wary, because he knows the chairman is semi kind of suggesting he needs a slightly older person embedded in the club culture. Yeah. And so Neil was a bit wary, but they got on like a house on fire, and that became a very successful partnership. If you go back to Howard Wilkinson as a 34-year-old head coach, Howard, who got the club promoted, to all intents and purposes, he was the manager. But Howard would speak at length about the debt he owed to Jimmy, because Jimmy was a sounding board. You've mentioned this before. In the current structure at the club, there is no one really with proven Football League experience anywhere. And that's not denigrating the people that are holding office within the club, from the ownership to Richard Montague, the football board. But there's no one. And kind of the most senior person is the head coach. And without in any way wishing to be disrespectful, Stuart's knowledge at Football League level is minimal. And in my time in football, I've worked with many people, and the scrutiny and the pressure that they are put under is truly immense. You can't equate that with people in our armed forces or services who put their lives on the line and all the rest. You can't equate that, but it's a different kind of scrutiny, and it's a different kind of focus. And if you're not careful, your head can literally explode, because you are put under so much pressure. People criticizing you, don't know anything about the game. They can, all 10,000 people in Meadow Lane can do the job better than Stuart Maynard. The reality is nobody can. Nobody can. Worry's the wrong word, But if I try and put myself in his shoes, you need to talk. Who does he talk to? I know he's got his backroom staff, but sometimes, and he'll have been in pro football, for me, he needs someone to chat, talk through, and maybe someone to pull him aside and just sound things out. Because the more the pressure grows, the harder it is to think clearly. And I do think you've brought this up in the past. I do think there's a potential weakness with a lack of professional football acumen knowledge sounding board within the club.
Yeah, well, I've said it, like I say, for years. I don't understand. Well, I don't understand, but and probably should start off by saying we don't know that he doesn't have plenty of league
Yeah,
manager experience sounding boards. You know what I mean? People
yeah.
who he
But I'm
speaks to
talking
on a regular
engaged by the
basis.
club that
Well,
directly he can interact
yeah,
with as part
yeah,
of Notts
exactly.
County's football club structure.
Yeah, and like I say, I've said this for years and years. Why there isn't, and some clubs do, don't they? They have a role as a football or technical director, whatever you want to call it, but it's sort of a go between, a football not know-how go between board level management and players and that sort of thing. Um, but I wonder. You listen to interviews of managers at top levels or experienced managers, and the most common one you hear is, "Oh, I was on the phone to Fergie. When I was having a bad time, Fergie rang me." Or Alex Ferguson. You hear all top managers talking about, you always had time with you, that chats with managers after the games and things like that. But I think eh, eh, mentor isn't the right word, but I
No,
think it's a sounding board, or
yes,
an experienced sounding board who you've got to trust. Trust is at the bottom of it as well, because football's a very insecure world. A lot of
yeah,
times managers come in, and this is not this is in general throughout football. And if you're deemed to be an inexperienced manager or a young manager or whatever it is, the likelihood is what you don't want around you is senior pros, or anybody who might be, or experienced heads, anybody who might be deemed as ready-made replacements to stand in the day you're sacked or you're under fire. We've got a ready-made caretaker here for the minute it starts going wrong. So sometimes that people are a bit wary about that, not for 1 second suggesting that's not. But I think if you can find somebody who's trustworthy, and whether it's one per, I,
Oh, it looks like Stell has been freeze framed in full flow there. I'm sure he'll be back with us in a moment. Stell, are you
am I
back?
back? Yeah, well,
Yes,
we
you're
both
back.
disappeared there on my thing. Don't know what happened there, but yeah, like I say, I don't know whether you caught that, but I say, for me, experience is. Don't know whether my internet is saying it's time to go, but yeah, I think it is like football league experience, and experience, somebody who's been there and maybe done it, experienced tough times. Like I say, there is a wealth of knowledge out there and a wealth of people out there, and I hope, and he might well do that. I hope he has plenty of people just to bounce things off, and just to help him, to help him get through difficult periods, because inevitably you're going to have difficult periods when you're a football manager, football league manager. You know, it doesn't always go exactly as you want it to.
Indeed, it doesn't. Chris Gosling, I've travelled nearly 1,900 miles watching Notts this season. For me, the next 5 games up to Swindon at home are make or break for Stewart. Fraser Dodds, none of the current management team have any pro playing or coaching experience at league level. Ian Cooksey, Neil has done the same at Torquay this season. Got Mike Edwards as number 2 to a younger manager. They've just gone top of National League South, so it would appear Neil remembers Derek's actions. Regards, Mick Jones. Andy Esom, I think it highly unlikely that the brothers would put up with a repeat performance as that at the weekend. People will vote with their feet. Duncan Conry, the brothers will have a cut-off point in mind, and if Stuart Maynard doesn't start to get the results needed, I believe he'll be gone by January. Wayne Wilkins from Barcelona. A few weeks ago, it was all about saying, let's get to January for players to come back and the window. Now we're out of control with our emotions and lack of critical thinking as a fan base. Mental, he says. Joe Crabtree. Stuart will have known that when he was given the opportunity, he always gives an honest appraisal after each match. I get the impression he backs himself and his backroom team to get us out of this situation. Ian Cooksey, Fergie will tell you he learned loans from Jimmy Cyril. Indeed, he did. When he went on courses with him, it was the fledgling, it was the founder, the forerunner, I should say, of the League Managers Association, when they all used to meet at the old Lillishall. Get Mad Dog in, says Richard Wood. We've just about recovered from the live event with Martin Allen, and by about on a week on Tuesday, I will have thawed out. Apologies for the temperature, but I think everyone had a good night.
The polar bear and the penguins left after 10 minutes. It was that cold.
Yes, and we should also say well done to Louis. He was a very rare breed, Belgian Griffin or something. I can't remember. We'll have to have him as the new show mascot. I think. Look, this unfortunately, I think, is a subject that we may continue to revisit. And just to clarify my reading of the situation, the brothers are historically very, very patient people. I don't think they will make any knee-jerk reactions. And whatever our own personal views are of the current coaching setup and management, I think they will look at this from a long-term point of view. Now, that's not to say I don't think fans could get very disillusioned, but I would be genuinely very surprised if there are any decisions that are taken in the near future. For my money, if you're asking me, I think Stuart will still be in charge at the end of the season. But look, let's see what happens. Bradford City, Stel. I guess not dissimilar to Notts, although they've clearly been at it a lot longer. Both five-figure fan crowds, big stadiums. They've struggled under the weight of expectation for quite a long time, and so far this season, it would appear they're still struggling to find a winning formula to get out of this division.
Yeah, and I would say and I'm not trying to appease people when people are disappointed and concerned with how things are going on. But teams like Bradford, big city club, as you say, well supported, big expectation on them. You're right, they've not been able to get success in League Two for years. They've had Andy Cook, who's been leading scorer in the division for
Yes.
for years, or certainly up there. So they've not struggled for goals, but they've still not been able to get a team around him. They've had different managers, experienced managers, whatever, tried different things. Getting success is not an entitlement just because you want it. There are 24 teams in this division that want success. They're not all entitled to it. You have to fight, scrap, overcome adversity, show skill, show your qualities to get it at the end of the season. Now, Notts at the minute are in a bit of a hole and they need to fight and scrap their way out of it. There wasn't enough fight and scrap in the game on Saturday, along with a lack of quality and a lack of everything else. But that doesn't mean that has whitewashed the whole season to mean nothing's going to happen. We've still got a great chance. The next game is the next chance you've got to show your quality, to get success, and it's success in that game. And you keep putting them little breadcrumbs together, and at the end of the season, that's what takes you to success. Throughout any 46-game season, pretty much every club has a sticky spell or a bad spell or whatever. So let's try not to become so far down on ourselves and on the team that it's all over. It's not all over. There's everything to fight for, but it takes an upturn in quality and improvement in everything from Saturday. But this is what can happen in football. And I use Bradford as a bit of an example of that. We shouldn't have just an expectation that because we're a well-run club, because we're a big club, because we've got a fantastic ground, fantastic fan base, wonderful pitch, best pitch in the division, and some quality players, even that doesn't entitle us to think, well, we'll get success. You've got to go and earn it. You've got to go and show it and prove it 46 times a season to get success. It's still doable, So while we're all peed off a bit and we're all disappointed, it's still there for us. It's still there for the players. It's still there for the coach. It is still there, but we've got to improve. But I just hope everybody. What you don't want is a division and a split in a fan base that, oh, I'm not going to watch him anymore. I don't think there's many people will be like that, but there are some, of course, and that's their entitlement. That's it. That's what they're entitled to do. It costs money to watch your team, but I just would hope that people still go and support and give it everything, and hopefully, I think the players owe you one from Saturday as fans. Hopefully they turn it round, and I would back them to do it, but you just never know with football. It is a long, hard slog sometimes a season, and they have got to pick up a tool and dig in, because, like I say, Saturday was not acceptable. They'll know that. Stewart knows that. He's apologised on behalf of him and the players. So they'll want to put it right on Saturday, and I certainly hope they do. And if they do, then that takes you into the Christmas games with a little bit of positivity, hopefully.
Come on, let's get behind them on Saturday, says Neil Widdowson. Up the Maggies, says Richard Elvian. Andy Easom, it's Aidan Baldwin on Saturday, Aaron the Man on Boxing Day. Let's make sure we're the ones smiling come the final whistle. And another bit of good news, Yvonne Biddle's been on. Louis, do you remember the doggy at the Martin Allen, the two mad dogs at the Martin Allen show?
Yep.
He will come on the show anytime. And I am sure, after barking his way through Martin Allen live show, I'm sure he'll talk a lot more sense. Not you, Stel. He'll certainly
easily
more sense than me, I'll tell you. So we'll get him on the next show with his little Notts County bandana, right, woofing away. And for those of you struggling for a Christmas present, haven't got one of these yet, 20 notes, the best 20 notes you'll know. I'll sign it. Send me a message. It's all on. You can get it on my YouTube channel, just not YouTube, eBay channel, or drop me a message and we can get these sent out to you. There's a lot of things in here that were written 10 years ago now, but are as true then as they are today. One Flew Over the Magpie's Nest. There you go. And also thanks to our official partners, JH Accountants. Thank you very much indeed to them. There are one or two other opportunities for you to, if you run your own business, have small businesses, to partner with us. We're trying to ramp up things in 2025. Please get in touch if you own a business or might be interested in partnering us along the lines of JH Accountants. Anyway, we're finishing on a high. Yeah, let's get behind everyone. You will be there Saturday, Stel?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, looking forward to it. And again, I want to see the response. Want to see a response. Say, I've played in games and I've had performances like Saturday. It's all about the response.
Absolutely. We will be back next Monday. That will be the last show before Christmas. Hopefully we've started to turn the tide. But as they always say, keep the faith. Thank you to everyone tonight on the message boards. Everyone has been very respectful, a broad church of views, as you would expect. Not only have I not had to show a red, I've not even had to show a yellow. So very good. Thank you to all. We will see you all next Monday. Cheers for now, and thank you again, Stel.
Cheers. Pleasure. Have a good night, everyone. Good week.
Take care, all. See you next week.